Aloha everyone, it's me Sarah, and today I'm here to break down the film The Life of Chuck, as well as explaining some of its themes and its ending. Before we dive in though, please give us a like, share and subscribe to our channel. So without further ado, there is a spoiler warning of course, but let's take a look at The Life of Chuck. The film opens on Act 3, as the story is told in reverse chronological order. We're inside of a classroom at a high school, where a student is giving a report. Chiwetel Ejiofor, who you might know as Baron Mordo from the MCU, plays the teacher, Mr. Marty Anderson. The class has only a handful of students in it, and the current lesson is with Walt Whitman. However, during the presentation, a girl checking her phone interrupts with news about California. A massive 9.1 earthquake has struck, breaking off an entire chunk from Fresno to Santa Barbara, sinking it into the Pacific. The Wi-Fi drops out suddenly, stopping anyone from looking any further into what's happening, and it seems that it has been happening a lot lately, that the internet has basically been shut off. Could this be the government trying to keep the public in the dark? Sounds like a threat level orange situation. A few hours later, once classes have ended for the day, Mr. Anderson holds a parent-teacher conference, discussing how his students, the few that he has, have been wildly distractive and failing. One of the parents gets quite angry, mentioning that all over the world people have just stopped caring and go and do whatever they want. Enter David Dasmashian, playing a grieving parent who remarks that the world is ending. So what's the point of anything really? Especially since Pornhub is down. I mean, what else is there to do now? Yes, that's an actual thing they mention in this film. However, while it is funny, it's also an interesting fact. Pornhub is the most visited website ever. So if the site were to go down, there would be something seriously wrong on the internet. We get some news expositions showing us that not only did hundreds of thousands of people either lose their homes or their lives in Californian quake, but the entirety of Yorkshire, England is underwater as well, and a thick cloudy mist has engulfed northern France, almost swallowing it whole, blocking out all the sunlight and killing all crops and whatnot. The Sierra Madre is on fire, and Germany had a volcano go off, with a massive stream of lava working its way through the country. Japan is literally cracking apart as if Godzilla had burst right up through the middle of the island, and Italy has pretty much sunk beneath the ocean. The earth really is going full apocalypse. Suddenly, Nick Offerman begins narrating Marty's life. The internet is now completely gone, just stopped existing. So no news, social media, no weather updates or traffic reports, no Spotify, no YouTube, and definitely no Pornhub. Marty is stuck in traffic, thinking about the last thing he saw before the internet went out. It was a digital billboard displaying Tom Hiddleston, and it reads, "Charles Krantz, 39, great years, thanks Chuck." What? Maybe you can already see where these pieces are going, but for now, let's just carry on. We switch over to Felicia Gordon, a nurse at City Central, played by Karen Gillan. The narrator informs us that over the last few months, much of the staff have just straight up left the hospital, and so she feels more like an undertaker than a lifesaver. The staff who have remained have dubbed themselves the Suicide Squad. Through a radio broadcast, we learn more about water and food shortages going on, when the reporter is interrupted by a commercial thanking Charles Krantz for 39 great years. Through a conversation with her co-worker, they talk about their relationships have changed between people now that they are unburdened. He possesses the question, does she think there are more marriages now or divorces? She answers that she believes it's marriages, and not because of some optimistic outlook, but because divorces take too long. So why not just marry whomever you want and however many people you want to be married to? It's not like anyone is keeping track anymore. Jumping back to Marty, and Felicia gives him a call. Seems like there's something there between them, and after a bit of chit chat, she begins to break down and cry to him about the world coming apart, and that she's scared. He calms her down with a little lesson on Carl Sagan about how the universe is over 15 billion years old. So if you took all of that and compressed it into a singular calendar year, the Big Bang would happen in the first second of January the 1st. And the very last millisecond would be December 31st. But come New Year's, we'd all be back as everything starts over again. So in simple terms, nothing really ends. It just gets changed and reborn. And when it comes to humanity, we've barely been here for a blink of the eye. So much has come before and so much will come after. While it doesn't exactly make her feel any better, they do each mention that Charles Krantz is retiring. 39 great years. Who is this guy and why is it so important? Some more news informs us that Ohio is now on fire, before the TV suddenly cuts out completely. Every channel is now experiencing technical difficulties. That is, until a commercial for Charles Krantz, 39 great years, thanks Chuck, plays. No matter how many channels Marty flips through, it's everywhere. The next morning we meet Marty's neighbour Gus, played by Matthew Lillard. Gus is out of breath. He just had to walk 3 miles home because his car, as well as several hundreds others, just stopped working suddenly. The other cars are all backed up in a huge traffic jam because a sinkhole opened up in the middle of the city, devouring a 20-block radius. Ooh. Lots going on here. We also learn from Gus that over 90% of food production in the United States is gone, either due to fires or lack of rain or other disasters. Overseas in Europe and Asia, famine has stricken them hard. Hundreds of millions are dead, and the world's entire bee population is gone. It's just gone. Several people are walking along the street past them looking absolutely discouraged. A woman remarks how she doesn't even know if she has a job anymore since the sinkhole swallowed the bank she works in. And another older looking man in a suit just stares at his briefcase before tossing it to the side of the road and begins to slowly trudge along forward. Gus asks Marty if he thinks suicides will ramp up or slow down. Personally, he thinks that the people who are left now will just wait it out, sees what happens at the end. The speech Gus gives about the 5 stages of grief is absolutely heartbreaking, remarking that the waiting part is the hardest. Matthew Lillard is on top form here. Just as the emotional moments conclude, Gus looks in the air and sees a plane doing some skywriting, saying goodbye to Chuck. Swapping over to Felicia, she passes several walls adorned with various graffiti, saying things like "I love you, Chuck," and "Chuck forever." When she arrives at work, she's told several doctors have just walked out, and many patients are also gone. But then something strange happens. There are several empty beds with ECG machines beside them, and all of them begin to beep, stating a heartbeat of 75. The phones are now down as well, as it seems they've either been shut off or people have stopped going to work, and so no one is there to make sure things are working. Marty heads into town, noticing that hundreds of abandoned cars on the roads and several posters saying goodbye to Chuck, some on the bus stations and some on lampposts. He runs into an elderly man who is sitting on a bench, as the rest of the town seems deserted, and strikes up a conversation about Krantz. The old man refers to him as the wizard behind the glass, Oz himself, while Marty thinks it's some elaborate mean prank. I would think it's a prank at this point. Since the buses aren't running, the two decide to walk together. Turns out the old man is a funeral director who's never been busier, but he used to dream of being a meteorologist or a TV weatherman. He believes the reason the world is ending is because we treated Mother Earth so terribly. But also, it's much more than that. The maths tells him that it's all part of some greater cosmic purpose. The two part ways and Marty continues to walk towards downtown to meet up with Felicia. He finally makes it to her neighbourhood and it's nighttime. The power suddenly goes out, drenching the area in darkness. Except the next thing to happen is that a bunch of holographic projections show up on all the windows, showing Charles Krantz in various stages of his life. He runs to Felicia's house and the two wrap their arms around one another. We learn that the two used to be married, but after some time apart, they found what they love about one another and find comfort in each other's arms again. We then cut to Charles Krantz in a hospital bed. He's thin, greying hair, hooked up to several monitors. His family is with him, tears streaming down their face. Charles is dying, and as his heartbeat slows and he begins to slip into the long night, the world has gone more and more silent. Stars begin blinking out of the night sky, entire constellations are disappearing. We get glimpses of Felicia and Marty as they sit together watching it all fall away. But at the hospital, Chuck's wife and son say their goodbyes. The last thing we see is Marty telling Felicia he loves her before they too vanish into nothing. Ooh, Stephen King, eh? We've now arrived at Act 2. Here we meet Taylor Frank, a young female drummer who sets up her kit on the 8th Street and plays for the passing public. Janice Halliday, on the other hand, is having a terrible day. Not only did she just work a 7-hour shift at the most boring job on the planet, she now has to walk home after getting dumped by her boyfriend of 16 months, who did it via text. And then we come to Charles Krantz, dressed in a fancy suit as he's a high-valued accountant, picking up his latte from the local Starbucks. Chuck's in town for a banking conference and has been enjoying his time, but prefers to spend his time alone. We get a bit of a backstory here and also learn that this is 9 months earlier before he receives his diagnosis that he has cancer and that it's fatal. Upon spotting Krantz, Taylor changes up her music style to try and get his attention, hoping he'll throw some cash towards her. But what happens next surprises her even more. Chuck begins to dance. He's totally feeling the beat. He busts out the samba, switching up to some kind of tango and finally full-on breakdancing. He even pulls off the moonwalk. A crowd gathers to watch this, and this only seems to fuel both Taylor and Chuck, and others begin to join in the dance. Janice, really feeling the vibes, takes Chuck's hand and the two boogie on down. I've gotta say, Hiddleston is a really talented dancer. He pauses for a moment, feeling a severe pain that hits him in the head like a rock, but he shakes it off and continues to kick up his heels with Janice. The crowd cheers and Janice is no longer having a shitty day. When the song finishes, he thanks her for the dance and Taylor for the amazing percussion demonstration. Taylor filled her hat to the brim today and it was been a good day. Chuck helps Taylor load up her kit into the van and both he and Janice join her for a small road trip. They go out for lunch and drinks and get to know each other when Taylor asks what made him stop and begin dancing. Chuck tells her he doesn't know, but in truth, he was thinking of his old high school garage band days and the beat just pulled him down memory lane. Taylor's gotta go, so Chuck and Janice take a walk along the river. She tells him about her day and he reassures her that she will be fine. He boosts her confidence by complimenting her and just by being a good listener. They reach the end of their walk and she thanks him again for the dance, and the two part ways. As Chuck looks around at the people in the small town square, we see many familiar faces from the beginning of the film. Chuck ponders about why he decided to dance and can't come up with an answer. The narrator informs us that not long after, Chuck will lose his ability to walk, to remember his wife's name, to think clearly, to stay awake, and finally, to breathe. But one memory will stay with him, that he stopped in the middle of the street to dance to some music. Now it's time for Act 1. This is many, many years ago. Chuck is little, being babysat by his grandparents, when his parents and his unborn sister were killed in a car crash. Albie, Chuck's grandfather, turns to drinking, hiding away in his office, while Zara becomes distant, abandoning all her hobbies and staring blankly at the wall most days. Chuck grew quiet himself, dealing with the loss of his own on his own terms while also still in the process of growing up. Over time though, the pain subsides and the music and laughter slowly comes back into the house. With each passing day, Sarah and Chuck would have a dance session together where she showed him musicals and taught him various moves. Sarah used to be a dancer back in high school, and a tight bond formed between her and Chuck. In the house, at the top of the stairs, there was a door with a heavy padlock on it. Albie forbade Chuck to ever go inside, and naturally this made him more curious about what could be in that room. Shortly before Chuck's 11th birthday, he and Albie were watching a program on TV about the universe, comparing the entire cycle to a single calendar year. His granddad was deep into the bottle of scotch when Chuck brought up the room. His grandfather replies with a cryptic answer that if he went up there, he would see more than he would ever want to know. He then goes on to tell the story of the house, built in 1881 in the Victorian style, and that while it's been remodelled several times over, that room has always been there, and it's filled with ghosts. He compares it to a Christmas carol, the ghosts who have yet to come. He mentions that over the years several people have died up there, and that one day when he was young, he saw something that he'll never forget, that shook him to his core. Ever since then, he's locked the door. This only leaves Chuck with even more questions though. The next day, Chuck goes over to Mrs. Stanley's house to bring her some baked goods that his grandmother made. Mrs. Stanley is quite the gossip, and so Chuck spills the beans on what his grandpa told him the night before, and that he had more questions about it. So she of course fills him in on all the real details. On the last week of school before spring break, we meet Mrs. Richards, a former hippie turned teacher, is trying to recite some Walt Whitman in her class, the poem A Song for Myself. The phrase I contain multitudes resonates deeply with Chuck. He stays after class to ask the teacher what it means. She explains that it can mean all the people that Whitman knew, but it also can mean something else. Another interpretation is everything you experience, everything you see, all the knowledge you acquire creates a world inside your mind. From the real to the imaginary, an entire universe can live inside of you. You contain multitudes. Chuck then asks what happens to the universe when someone dies. She tells him not to worry about that. He still has many years to build his universe. Not too long after, his grandmother passed away, and this took an even further toll on Albie. Chuck basically had to grow up much faster than he planned to and begins to take on more responsibilities. He heads to the pharmacy where his grandmother died and asks the girl at the register if she saw it happen. She recounts the tale and Chuck feels stuck, even knowing the whole truth, every detail. It felt so ordinary. When he returns home, Albie is passed out from drinking, and so he swipes the keys to the locked room. The moment he opens it though, his grandpa storms up the stairs and shouts at him to stop. He pushes Chuck aside and before he closes the door, he stares into the room and looks horrified and traumatized. He slams the door shut and turns to Chuck and begins to apologize for knocking him over, and the two hug each other tight. Back in school, Chuck has now joined dance class, and to his teacher's surprise, he already knew all the dances. Since he was so good, the teacher would often pair him with the clumsy girls to help them get better. But on special days, he was teamed with Kat, who he had perfect timing and chemistry with. During freestyle practice, he teaches both Kat and his teachers, as well as the rest of the class, how to do the moonwalk. After class lets out, he walks Kat home and he is crushing hard, but Kat is dating Dougie. However, she wants to be friends with him. He takes it in stride and the two begin planning a performance for the talent show. Chuck also shows an aptitude for maths, which is right up Grandpa's alley, as he is an accountant. Chuck remarks how maths is boring, but Albie reminds him that math is involved in everything. Every job, in time, even in art and dance. He breaks down how scientists figured out the universe, landing on the moon, the location of stars, how old the universe is, all because of maths. Numbers are life, especially in accounting. You can see a person's entire life going through all of their records. However, there's also maths in statistics. And statistically speaking, he tells Chuck that he has a better chance of winning the lottery than he does at making it as a dancer. But the world needs accounting, and well, we all know what Chuck ends up doing with his life. It's the school dance, and Chuck attends looking much like a wallflower. Kat finds him and asks him to dance, but Chuck tries to make excuses on why he can't dance. He hangs around the punch bowl as Kat dances with her boyfriend, when the dance teacher approaches him and asks him why he's not out there busting a move. Again, he makes an excuse, but she can clearly see that he's heartbroken over Kat. She says, "Don't think too much. There's so many opportunities. He should just get out there." But Kat once again approaches Chuck for a dance, but he turns her down. He sneaks out the back of the gym and stares up into the night sky. After a deep breath, he heads back in, takes Kat's hand and pulls her onto the dance floor. And the two begin grooving, and boy do they put on a show. Dougie, however, is less than impressed. As they finish up their dance, Kat plants a kiss right on Chuck's lips, and the crowd goes wild. The narrator pops in to tell us that years later, Chuck and his now wife Kat would remember back to this night, and he tells her about what he realised on that night was that the universe opened up to him and let him know that he was special, and that all he had to do was believe in it and be himself, and he would feel wonderful. 5 years after the dance, when Chuck had joined a band and begun becoming into his own, his grandfather passed away from a heart attack. Remember that old man that Marty was talking to earlier in the film? He was a client of Albie's and handled his estate. He shares some stories about Chuck's grandfather before going over the will. Along with the house and a hefty saving account, the grandfather also left Chuck the key to the room. Chuck returns home and climbs the stairs and opens the locked door. To his surprise, it was just an empty small space with a large window across from the door that looked over the neighbourhood. He turns to leave but then hesitates, and when he looks back, he sees himself, much older, dying in a hospital bed. Chuck remembers something that his grandfather had said, something we also heard Gus say. It's the waiting that's the hard part. Chuck finally understood what that meant, knowing that the end was coming, not exactly when, but that it was for sure his fate. something I think we can all agree on can be a hard thing to accept sometimes. In the final moments of the film, Chuck tells himself that he will live his life to the fullest, that he is wonderful and deserves to be wonderful, and that he contains multitudes. The film quietly fades out and the credits begin to roll. So what exactly happened? Well, in case you were still a bit lost, the ending of the world in the beginning of the film was just one of many worlds, this one in particular being that one that lived inside of Chuck. All the people he met in his life, like Mr. Anderson, who taught at his school, the old man who worked at the funeral home, all of them lived lives inside of Chuck's inner world. I'm sure many of you watching this have lost touch with friends or family or so over the course of your lives and wondered what they are up to, imagining scenarios or travelling down memory lane. These people, these moments live inside you, and especially for creative types, can blossom and create entirely new realities, all in your own mind. All those times you overthought a situation, played out how it would go, gave birth to a new timeline of sorts, and in the case of this film, when Chuck reached the end of his life, so did the universe inside of him. I want to thank you all for checking out this breakdown. What did you guys think of the film? Are you a big Stephen King fan? He's got 2 more films coming out this year, The Long Walk and a remake of The Running Man. So be sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel so you can catch our reviews and breakdowns for those in the future as well as many other films. I have been your host Sarah and thank you for being here with me today. I hope you all have a beautiful day and take care. Goodbye.
Sleep alone. Your bed is where I'm home. I can't wrap my head around anyone but you. I know there is something wrong. I'm praying to a foreign god, asking if you're devoted to